In case you missed it, the first stage of the LCK Cup 2026 has ended, and with it, one team out of the 10 teams has been eliminated, and that team is Hanwha Life Esports. Let's go back a little bit in time to see how this happened. At the end of 2025, it was already known that Peanut was going to retire after Worlds, and after Hanwha Life ended their run on the 28th of October, Peanut's departure was announced later by Hanwha Life. And the following date, Viper was also announced to be leaving the team. 4 days later, both positions were announced as to who would fill them. The first person was Gumayushi for the AD carry position, and Kanavi for the jungle position. And with that news came expectations on just how good this team will be. Expectations that they would do even better than they did the previous year. And while they did show a lot of promise in the Kespa Cup and came second, it was important to remember that Gen G didn't send their full roster. Fast forward to January, where the LCK Cup begins, and as HLE and Gen G were the finalists for the 2025 LCK Finals, they were immediately seeded into separate groups and had to conduct a snake draft, which means the team that picks first in round 1 has to pick second in round 2, and it continues. So in this case, Gen G chose first pick since they won the last LCK Finals, and they picked T1. HLE picked D plus Kia, and round 2 HLE had first pick and they chose KT roster, and the draft went on like this, and this was the result. Now, as for the way it works, each team from Group Baron will play against a team from Group Elder, all at least once. The first 2 weeks will be best of 3s, each worth 1 point for the group, and the third week will be best of 5s, each worth 2 points for the group. And by the end, the group with the most points wins. And their top 2 will go straight into playoffs, and the bottom 3 of the group will go to play-ins. On the other side, the best team of the losing group will also go to playoffs, and the following 3 teams will go to play-ins, but the last team out of the 5 will be eliminated from the LCK Cup 2026. Moving on, the top 3 teams from the play-ins will go to playoffs, and the other 3 will be eliminated. And as for the playoffs, it will be best of 5s, double elimination rounds until the winner is crowned. And the 2 finalists will go to First Stand 2026. So let's go back to the beginning, right after the group draft, where Hanwha Life would have T1 as their first opponent, meeting again since Kespa Cup Finals, which T1 won. So would HLE get their revenge? Well, most people didn't think so. Even most casters thought the same thing, and unfortunately for Hanwha, they were right. Despite playing well in Game 1 and winning, they lost Game 2 as T1 was just in control of the game for the whole duration, and as for Game 3, they gave Carey a Bard, and that's no different to just admitting defeat, as not only was it a perfect game for him, but for Pace as well. And while it wasn't the best start for Hanwha, however their second match, most English casters were in agreement that they would win, and it was against Nongshim Red Force. And so on to Game 1, which for the most part seemed like Hanwha was winning, but not for a long shot. It seemed like the game was still playable for Nongshim, until Zeus did this.
Himself into position, there's the flash ulti onto 3 as the Q knocks up 2 of them, and there's the shuffle from Zeka, down will go the Lulu.
After 2 quick picks, HLE looked at Baron, but the rest of Nongshim wanted to stop it, and since Zeka opted for a reset, this was their chance to stop them, and they succeeded in not only stopping them, but killing Kanavi, which gave them some room to breathe. But Hanwha still had their lead. A few minutes later, Lehens gets picked off, and HLE seemed like they would just get the Baron and end. Until a perfect engage from Kingen, with Zahen dashing into Zeus and pulling the bot lane while Scout shockwaves at the same time, immediately one-shots them, which made the situation a 4v3. They then win the fight and end the game. A devastating loss for Hanwha Life, who had control of the whole game, but lost it all in one fight. Game 2, however, wasn't like Game 1. HLE did play a good early game, getting every objective until the 3rd Drake, to which Nongshim pick off Delight, take the Drake, and take over the map. Later, a fight broke out at around 2640, which ended up deciding the game, as after it they got Baron and got even more control. Nongshim eventually ended the game at 34-27, and so week 1 ended with Hanwha Life being 0-2, and the group score being tied 5-5. While it was an unfortunate start to the season, they would turn it around with the second week, where they would play against Hanjin Brion, or Bro for short, and DN Supers, and win both series with a 2-1 score in the best of 3s, with no doubt from any of the casters. I think. Maybe Ox doubted them, but who knows? He probably didn't care. And the week came to an end with the group score being 10-10. And now is a good time to remember that whoever is the last place of the losing group by the end of week 3 will be eliminated. And that will be judged by 2 things. First of all, the number of wins they have. I'm not talking about matches, but games. Meaning, if you lose a match but still won one game, like having a score of 2-1, that would still count as having one win, and that will be judged whether you are in last place or not. Another thing that will also be judged in case there is a tie in the number of wins will be the average time, and the team with the longer average time will be eliminated. And with this info, let's move on to week 3, where HLE would have to play against the only team they haven't played against in Group Baron, which was Gen G. And that was gonna be the last game of the week. But before that, let's take a look at how the week went. On the first day, DRX went up against Bro and came out on top with a 3-2 win. Not only did this add a win to their matches, but it also added 3 games to the game score counter, as well as 2 points for their group elder. Next up, BFX beat DNS with a score of 3-1, which also added a win to their matches, as well as plus 3 games to their game score and 2 points for group elder. And on the third day, Nongshim went against KT and came out on top. However, KT won 2 games out of the 5, but this wasn't enough to keep them from dead last on their group. While their match score was the same as DRX, their game score wasn't, as DRX was up by 1 win compared to KT, but this only matters if they are the losing group, and at the end of the third day of week 3, their group was up 2 points. On the next day, T1 would play against DK and completely crush them, winning 3-0, despite most people predicting that DK would at least grab a game or 2. But due to that loss, the groups were now tied at 14-14, and as DK now had 1 less game compared to BFX, they were now second, and HLE was in a dangerous position. Hanwha Life were 2-2 in matches, with their last match on the next day versus Gen G, but their score had 5 wins, meaning they will need to win at least 1 game against Gen G to tie with KT, and win 2 games to survive in the tournament. And if they did win 1 game, there won't be a tiebreaker match between them and KT as I mentioned earlier. This will depend on game time. How fast can they end the game? And they need to win a game in less than 34 minutes and 43 seconds to have a lower average win time than KT. To sum it all up, look at this table from LCK. If HLE wins, no matter the score, they will still be in the tournament. But if Gen G wins, there are 3 scenarios. Scenario A, they win 3-0. That would mean Hanwha Life is out. Scenario B, they win 3-1. If Hanwha Life takes a game, then they need to win it under 34 minutes and 43 seconds. If they do, they stay in and KT is eliminated. But if the time is over that, then HLE is eliminated. Scenario C, they win 3-2. That would mean Hanwha Life stays in, as they will have 1 more game than KT, who would be eliminated. Since we've covered this, let's go to the games. Game 1 was mostly quiet early on until the first Drake, where Canyon stayed hidden in the bush and Kanavi had no idea. But when Canyon went for the steal, he was a bit too early and failed. A couple seconds later, the junglers were fighting for Scuttlecrab. Kanavi had the upgraded smite, but Canyon had top and mid prio. Kanavi however hit 6 from the scuttle, and Hanwha were able to come out of the whole fight up 2 kills. The game seemed to be going well for Hanwha until the fight at Herald, where Kanavi managed to steal the Herald, but Dura's Nico got 4 people with the Pop Blossom. While he died right after his ult, the fight ended up as 1 kill plus Herald for Hanwha compared to 5 kills for Gen.G. The game became a horror for Hanwha. Not only were the teamfights hard to play out, but Gen.G had very strong side laners, matching Yone into Cassandra with Koenig Rukan and Aurora with Azir, who was 2 levels down. At almost 24 minutes, Chovy looked for a pick on Zeka but failed. Hanwha wanted to punish this, so Kanavi and Delight teamed up, and while they were chasing Chovy, that left the Baron for the taking for Gen.G. Despite Hanwha losing the Baron, they stalled long enough for the whole team to arrive. But even in a 4v5 situation, Hanwha got nothing, and Gen.G walked away with a kill instead. Gen.G couldn't end the game though, until the next Baron, which they forced since Hanwha had no vision. But when Delight saw a window, he quickly went in with the quickness. Unfortunately, he was quickly routed by Juro, and got one shot. Gen.G continued to just run Hanwha down. However, Gen.G still didn't end. They played it safe. Instead, they went for Soul, and Hanwha got a good engage and they killed off the Yunara instantly. But with Duro's R getting 3, Chovy getting 2, and an unscathed Aurora, the fight ended with a penta for Aurora, and they ended the game about 2 minutes later. This meant if Hanwha Life loses 2 more games, then they would be out. Pressure was slowly creeping into the players. In Game 2, Gen.G had the lead in the early game, until the fight for first Drake at minute 11. Kanavi steals the Drake, but Chovy gets a 3-man taunt, and Gen.G were following up. But Jarvan ulted them, and while trapped, they got ulted by both Orianna and Misfortune, giving over the lead to Hanwha Life. But later on, Guma and Delight get picked off. Compared to Game 1, this one was much closer. Gen.G wins some fights, and HLE wins some too. But HLE built a very solid lead following the fight over the first Chemtech Drake. They then got Baron at 25 minutes, however they still needed to win in less than 10 minutes. HLE did get a lot of structures with the Baron, but still couldn't end. And when the Baron respawned, they went for it again, and ended up fighting the battle on 2 fronts. On one side they were winning against Chovy, Ruler and Juro, but on the other they were losing against Canyon and Keen. The fight ended with a 3-for-3, but it was over 32 minutes then, meaning it was almost impossible for Hanwha to end the game within 34 minutes and 43 seconds. This meant even if they won the game, they would need to win another. But 2 minutes later, Gumayusi got ulted by Juro, Gumayusi got ulted by Bard, and he had no flash. He quickly got one shot, and the game was over from there, making Hanwha 0-2 in the series, putting them in a really desperate situation where if they lose the next one, they are out. On to the stressful Game 3. Nothing big happened in the early game till minute 10, where both top laners died after junglers interfered in their lanes. And 1 minute later, Ruler was caught, and in an attempt to save him, Juro flashed and threw the lantern over the wall, but Delight quickly placed wards on top of it. Ruler failed to get the lantern and died. Later, on a fight for Drake, which looked bad for Hanwha as they had no ultimates compared to Gen.G who had 4, Delight gets hooked and dies instantly. Then Canyon goes in to secure the Drake. As soon as Zeus had ult, he used it on them and then flashed in to deal as much damage as possible. But sadly, with the slow follow-up from his teammates, they only got Juro in the end. Later in the game, Juro's hook finds Kanavi's Trundle, but he just barely survives, and Hanwha immediately collapses on the play and pushes Gen.G back, but Gumayusi dies after taking 3 tower shots. And soon after, Canyon ults on Zeus and gets the kill. Gen.G later secures the next Drake, which puts them on soul point, leaving one more to get the soul, and when it spawned, Hanwha realized they couldn't fight it, so they forced the Baron. Knowing this was their last chance to make a stand for this game, Gen.G realized this, and they decided to take the fight. Canyon ults in and manages to get the Baron, and what seemed to be a losing fight for them quickly got turned around by Chovy flash ulting from behind the pit and killing Gumayusi, and then Ruler just walked in from the front and dealt with the rest. Finally, Genji picked up Kanavi near the Elder Spawn timer. Hanwha then tried to fight it, but they all died for nothing. They proceeded to end the game with a match score of 3-0 and a +2 to their group score, and so Group Baron won and the last place of Group Elder was eliminated. What a brutal ending for Hanwha Life. The roster with many expectations was eliminated from the LCK Cup 2026 as the 10th place team, after only 3 weeks of the split, with 4 best of 3s and 1 best of 5. There is no redo, there is no saving grace. First Dance 2025's champions will not be back to defend their crown in this year. They will not be playing on stage until April, when the LCK Spring 2026 starts. This is the end on Hanwha's run in the LCK Cup 2026. If you've made it to the end, please like the video and subscribe for more content like this.